All right, now joining us on the broadcast, we've got Professor Giorgio Cafiero, who's a professor at the Georgetown University and also CEO of the Gulf State Analytics. Professor Cafiero, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on WION. Now, that statement by Donald Trump that everyone should leave Tehran, that's such a blanket statement. It does not specify as to what is likely to happen, but in your assessment and in your reading, does this indicate that the Americans could be joining this war?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me on your show. Always an honor to be your guest. We should point out that Tehran, as of now, because of everything that's happened since June 13th, has become a semi-deserted city. So already so many of the residents have left the Iranian capital, but there are still so many people remaining in Tehran. It's such a huge city. This idea that everyone who's there can simply evacuate at once just because of a social media posting from President Trump, totally unrealistic. Now, to get to your question, does this mean that the U.S. is going to get involved more directly? It certainly could. It could also be Trump issuing a warning about what Israel might do next. We don't know, but it's clear Trump is trying to scare the Iranians and put pressure on the Iranian government to make the kinds of concessions to the United States that Trump would like to see Tehran make. I don't think the Iranian leadership really bows down under this kind of pressure, but I think Trump thinks there's reason to expect them to do so, and I think he's just simply trying to sort of intimidate and bully Iran into submitting to the demands of the United States and Israel.
Yeah, this is clearly intimidation that the American president is resorting to. The population of the city of Tehran proper is said to be about 9.8 million people, and 16.8 million people make up the metropolitan area of Tehran. And one statement by Donald Trump on his social media post saying that everyone should leave Tehran now, it's difficult to imagine as to how all these many people will evacuate and where can they even go. But Professor Cafiero, looking at the statements that have been made also by the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, where he's very openly talking about the assassination of the Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, where in one of the interviews he has said that the assassination of the Iranian Supreme Leader will not escalate this conflict, but will actually end this conflict. Are you convinced that the Israeli Prime Minister understands what he's saying here, or is this war for just war's sake that he seems to be continuing with?
I'm sure this is the type of move that Netanyahu and those around him would like to make. I think the question, though, has to do with the U.S. pressure on Israel to not do so. There have been some conflicting reports. I'm not exactly sure what's fact, what's fiction, but at least according to some reports, the Israelis had a plan to assassinate Iran's supreme leader, and Trump told Israel that this was unacceptable and therefore Israel didn't do it. And on the Israeli government side, there's a denial that this was ever the case. But in any event, I think for Israel to do something like that, there would have to be some sort of a green light from the United States. So I think really when it comes to that question, the ball is really in the Trump administration's court. And like I said, according to some reports, the Trump administration is not going to allow Israel to do that. I do think what Trump would like to see is one consequence of these past few days of gruesome warfare be an Iranian decision to come back to the negotiating table and resume the talks with the United States.
Right.
Now, I don't think that that's going to work out neatly or smoothly, if at all, but I think the Trump administration, at least Trump's idea is that this can happen, and he probably assesses that if this war results in the supreme leader being killed, there's no way that that could happen. So I have to think that these are the kinds of factors on Trump's mind.
Right. Now, this war was never going to be an even contest. There is a clear disparity between the capabilities of the two nations that are at war with each other. The Israelis have better technology, and more importantly, they have the backing of the superpower of the world. The United States of America has been giving the Israelis all the weapons that they've been using. This is something that Donald Trump has in fact gone on record and said. But looking at the damage that the Iranians have been able to inflict on the Israeli cities, such as Tel Aviv and Haifa, that aura of invincibility that the Israelis had had in their previous conflicts in the last 7 decades, do you think that aura of invincibility, where the Israeli cities had not come under attack on a scale such as this, has that been dented?
Yeah, absolutely. I think on June 13th, when Israel kicked off the Operation Rising Lion, the idea was that the Israelis were going to have sort of a knockout early on and achieve some sort of a decisive victory over Iran, and that Iran would be so badly hit and its weapons arsenal would be so depleted that the Islamic Republic would not really be in a position to retaliate. What we saw only 18 hours after Israel initiated this war is that Iran is able to retaliate rather effectively. And although the casualty count in Iran is much higher than it is in Israel, there definitely have been, my understanding is something like 24 Israeli casualties, hundreds of injuries, a tremendous amount of property destruction. Flights are not, the airport is basically shut down. That's Israel's gateway to the rest of the world. And the Iranians have damaged the country's power grid. There's a lot of explosions and fires all over Israel, a lot of panic, a lot of fear.
Right.
So I think the Iranians have absorbed the initial few days of Israel's strikes, and they've been able to continue this tit-for-tat campaign back and forth.
Right.
And I think what Iran has demonstrated is that it's not a country like, say Syria, Gaza, Lebanon, where the Israelis can just sort of bomb at will anytime they want without consequences. I think Iran has made it very clear that the consequences for bombing Iran are very serious.